All right. Okay, Wolverine fans, let's get going here. Questions after Michigan's fairly unimpressive 31-6 victory over Bowling Green. Whoo! Wolverine fans definitely need some therapy this morning. So we're here to give it to you. Wolverine Fan Therapy Sunday morning recap of Michigan's 31-6 victory over Bowling Green. Questions that we have to ask. Did we have J.J. McCarthy overrated? Is Penn State actually the team to beat in the Big Ten Conference? Is Michigan's running game and offensive line just not as good in 2023? Miles Hinton, is he just strong in pass protection but not very good in run blocking? Is Donovan Edwards broken, or is he ready to break out? And is there something more serious going on with Will Johnson and or Rod Moore? We're going to answer these questions the best of our ability today. All right. Woo! Takeaways from that Michigan game. Wow. Wasn't exactly what we were expecting. Michigan threw a big party Saturday night at the stadium with new lights, and unfortunately, the light show was probably the most impressive performance that we all got to see on Saturday at Michigan Stadium. But ching, is it time to say it's basketball season after a football performance like that? Okay, that's yeah, we don't want to go there. That's a whole nother story for another time, the basketball team. But in all seriousness, now that the non-conference season is over, what many of us were calling the preseason or scrimmage games or other things like that, Bowling Green may turn out to be the best of the three teams that Michigan played. We thought that was going to be East Carolina, but now East Carolina stands at 0-3 after getting smoked in the second half against Appalachian State yesterday, and they got beat down pretty good at home by Marshall, 31-13 the week before. UNLV, Michigan's second opponent, did have an impressive home victory over an SEC team, albeit Vanderbilt. They did beat Vanderbilt 40-37. So here's some quick hitters on Michigan that we want to talk about today. This team desperately needs its head coach back. I think that goes without saying. The team needs its leader, and there seems to be something missing from all three of these games, and that finally really hit home in the Bowling Green game, where Michigan had 4 turnovers. J.J. McCarthy played probably his worst game in a Michigan uniform, and the team just overall was fairly uninspired and listless. Michigan's offensive line, after 3 games, is still having some issues. Looking to work in 3 new starters this year, it looks like things are still in flux. Miles Hinton, number 78, transfer from Stanford, has proven to be quite good in pass protection, but he has been struggling some in run blocking. And that looks like he got replaced midway through the third quarter of the Bowling Green game with Ladarius Henderson, a transfer from Arizona State. And then Carson Barnhart moved over to the other side of the line. So Michigan's been excellent in pass protection, but this is a concern. If Michigan is not getting push up front against UNLV, East Carolina, and Bowling Green, that doesn't bode well for the meat of the Big Ten season when they start going against teams with much better defenses, which is starting next week with Rutgers. So we're going to get into that a little bit, but the reality is Michigan has struggled with Rutgers the last few times that they've played them. If not for a couple of Mike Barrett pick sixes, Michigan was in a real dogfight at Rutgers last year, and Rutgers defense is pretty good. So, and they're certainly not afraid of Michigan. They are going to be coming into Michigan Stadium next Saturday with confidence, thinking that they can possibly win the game. So, Michigan's offensive line issues are a concern. Michigan also, in our opinion, seems to be missing one of the players from last season on offense that people may not readily think about that Michigan is missing is Luke Schoonmaker. Luke Schoonmaker, now playing for the Dallas Cowboys, was a combination of a really good run blocking tight end and a capable pass catcher. He maybe isn't quite as dynamic of a pass catcher as a Colston Loveland, but he was very steady in the run game and run blocking, and that is incredibly important for Michigan's running schemes. So something that maybe is a little bit underappreciated is how much Michigan is missing Luke Schoonmaker. Colston Loveland and A.J. Barner are an excellent tight end duo, but they are primarily pass-catching tight ends, at least so far. It seems like them working with the new players on the offensive line, something just isn't entirely working. And of course, this is concerning as Michigan has not really played Big Ten level defenses in its first 3 games. Donovan Edwards, you just can't get any long runs. We certainly do not think that Donovan Edwards is broken. Some people have been theorizing that potentially he is injured or hurt. I don't think so. It doesn't appear to be that that's the case, but he just hasn't been able to get out into any space. And then hopefully the play calling for Donovan Edwards has been fairly plain vanilla. J.J. McCarthy, who absolutely wowed us and blew everyone away in the first 2 games this season, came crashing down to earth on Saturday night in the Big House against Bowling Green and had his probably worst performance yet in a Michigan uniform. He's still prone to having some bad stretches and gunslinger moments. See the TCU game last year. So that is a concern, and it is what it is. You take the bad with the good. J.J. McCarthy, who has such a high ceiling and the potential to be an NFL quarterback and a high draft pick, has still some moments where he plays like a very young 20-year-old player. And that's kind of just the way it is. Thank goodness for Roman Wilson. 6 touchdowns in 3 games, and he seems to be become a real superstar and playmaker. So, all right, let's break this down a little bit more. It was a big party Saturday night. Maybe J.J. McCarthy was partying. We don't know for sure. But no, I think in all seriousness, Wolverine fans, to provide a little bit of therapy here and some perspective, one of the things that I take away after the game is, wow, look just how far we have come as a fan base. I heard quite a few fans I think these guys are drunk on their own success, their own press clippings, and I would turn that Wolverine fan base right back on us as fans. Speaking about myself too, maybe I have to look in the mirror, and maybe it's us that are actually, we're a little drunk on the success and the press clippings. It's very easy to remember those once in a generation moments where Donovan Edwards is breaking off 75 and 85-yard runs in the Horseshoe in Columbus, Ohio, and think that that's just going to happen. But the reality is, in the early season of any college football team, there's a lot of kinks to work out. And it really wasn't that long ago, 4 seasons ago, 2019, Michigan had to go to double overtime to beat Army. One of the worst performances that I've witnessed in person at Michigan Stadium. Talk about not getting push up front. Michigan couldn't even get push up front against a service academy team. No disrespect to Army at all, but we won the game 24-21. It was just 4 seasons ago. 5 years ago, Michigan opened at Notre Dame. Fans love to see those games. They're super fun for us, super fun for the alums, and our offensive line was not ready for that game. John Runyon, in that game, I remember people referring to him as a turnstile in that game. It was embarrassing. He was getting run over on a regular basis. John Runyon starts for the Green Bay Packers, okay? So he obviously had the potential, but he just wasn't ready in the first game of the season to handle the talent of a Notre Dame, of a top 10, top 20 defensive line. And so I think with Michigan's current team and current offensive line setup, nobody wants to be patient. Look, this is a problem. If we can't manhandle and get pushed regularly against these teams, it's a concern. And so I'm not denying that at all. But I will say that to just make these sweeping conclusions that we're just going to lose 2 or 3 games this year, that the offensive line just isn't as good, I think it's a little premature to come to those kind of sweeping conclusions. Again, Miles Hinton, who's now a 5th-year player and very likely will play in the National Football League. He weighs like 340 pounds. He's absolutely a prototypical NFL offensive lineman. But yeah, the film doesn't lie. He's not really getting a tremendous push against okay, decent defensive lines. And so maybe things need to be switched up some. But the other thing is, even in 2021, where Michigan went 11-1 and won the Big Ten championship, and of course we all will never forget finally breaking through and beating Ohio State. If you remember back to that year, which is just 2 short seasons ago, the big issue that Michigan was having all the way into November was red zone scoring, not being able to push through and get touchdowns and settling for field goals. It's really the reason why we lost the game at Michigan State when Kenneth Walker, Michigan State, scored 5 touchdowns. Michigan had 7 or 8 scores, but a lot of them were field goals instead of touchdowns. So that wasn't that long ago. And again, that offensive line won the Joe Moore Award. So look, I'm not a Pollyanna, and I'm not trying to paint everything as rosy, because it's not. These are concerns. One might wonder if you could give Josh Heupel at Tennessee or or some other, one of the best offensive coordinators in college football, whoever you want to name. If you could give them Donovan Edwards and J.J. McCarthy and Blake Corum and Roman Wilson and Colston Loveland, would they be able to find a way to get Donovan Edwards in space more than Michigan has? Sure. Yeah. But again, Michigan hasn't had its head coach. We don't want to go off on another rant against the NCAA, but I have consistently said for the past few weeks that I am not of the mind that it was no big deal that Jim Harbaugh hasn't been with the team. And I think you could see that on Saturday. I think everyone's excited and going to welcome him back on the sidelines. His tenacity, his ability to just calm everyone down, but just overall his leadership. Continuing on, moving a little bit toward the defense. The defense rose to the occasion against Bowling Green, but it's relevant to point out that Bowling Green was down to its third string quarterback. Their starting quarterback, Connor Bazelak, couldn't even play. He got hurt Thursday night. Head coach Scott Loeffler mentioned in the post game that they knew he wasn't going to play Thursday night. They knew he wasn't going to play on Saturday. So they went with the backup. Then he got injured. They were down to their third string quarterback, and he was the one that threw the interception to Chris Jenkins, which was probably the biggest highlight of the game for the football team and for Wolverine fans. But after that, Bowling Green basically ran the ball almost exclusively in the second half. The other thing that happened was that horrible injury to the Bowling Green linebacker Demetrius Hardiman, and prayers that go out to him. And it was a rough moment for everybody on both teams. Of course, mostly the Bowling Green team and coaching staff, but the whole stadium. It just took the air out of everything. And after that, Michigan just kind of weakly did a running play on 3rd and 14 and then just kicked a field goal. And after that, it was just kind of like the air was sucked out of the stadium, and everyone just kind of caused all players from both teams to just become a bit emotionally drained. And the game seemed to kind of languish from that point on. But on defense is maybe where my frustration lies a little bit more and concern. I think the offense is going to get things figured out on the offensive line for the most part. I think J.J. McCarthy is an outstanding quarterback. He just has these gunslinging moments. My bigger concern is on defense in the fact that Will Johnson and Rod Moore haven't played. What I see in this defense, and what I think most people have pointed out, is that the Michigan defensive line is scary good. With Kenneth Grant now being a fixture in the interior of that line, Michigan has in Mason Graham, Chris Jenkins, and Kenneth Grant. I don't know if we've ever had 3 defensive tackles like that will all likely play in the NFL. And if they really focus on their craft, all 3 could potentially be high draft picks. This may be the first Michigan team ever to be able to really claim that. I'm 54 years old. I've been a Michigan fan for 50 years. I can't remember a team that had 3 like that. Last year there was Mozzie Smith and Chris Jenkins, but Chris Jenkins seems to have gotten even bigger and better. And now Mason Graham's a sophomore, and Kenneth Grant. And then, you've got other ones like Cam Good, who, other people that are filling in. The rotation there is scary good. You've got Michigan's rush ends. We've talked about this in previous weeks. 4 solid rush ends. Josiah Stewart looked great last night. Jalen Harrell was the one with the strip sack against Bowling Green. He looks like he's elevated even more. Derek Moore, Braden McGregor. These guys are scary good. Michigan's linebackers, Junior Colson and Mike Barrett and Ernest Hausman, are right up there with anybody in the Big Ten. So my frustration is that with Will Johnson and Rod Moore not playing, it's really depriving this defense and we as fans and of college football to see just how good this defense could be. I really think this defense is special and could be one of the top 5 defenses in all of college football if Will Johnson and Rod Moore play. Okay, it's been fine so far, and I'm not picking on the players that have played, but when we get into the meat of the schedule, look, Keyshawn Harris is not going to be the one that we want covering Marvin Harrison Jr. Okay, it needs to be Will Johnson. It needs to be an All-American cornerback. When we get into the meat of the Big Ten schedule, Keon Sabb looks like he very well may be a starter and probably is going to be in the mix. But I don't think we're going to be really behind the 8 ball if we're counting on freshmen or even Quentin Johnson and some of these other players to play that safety role that Rod Moore was expected to be playing. So I've seen Will Johnson warming up. He certainly looks fine. I don't know if something else is going on with him. It's just a huge question mark, but we need him to come back and we need him to be healthy. Rod Moore, rumors are he's going to be out for a couple more weeks, and haven't seen him warming up. That one maybe is just as concerning, but the reality is I'm getting really tired of everyone just, of not having these 2 important pieces on defense, and everyone just assuming, oh, well, they're just sitting out these first 3 games. I don't know if this is just strategic or if there's something more going on, but we really need them to come through, or else it is going to cost. I heard a couple of people saying, oh, this is the first game where not having those players has really cost Michigan. I couldn't disagree more. Just because Bowling Green hit a couple of passes, that's not missing Will Johnson. Okay, if he doesn't play against Ohio State with their wide receivers, or Penn State with their wide receivers, they're lighting us up. Okay, in some kind of a Plaxico Burress-esque performance. Okay, these guys are some of the best wide receivers in all of college football. They are also first, second round draft picks that will be playing in the NFL for many seasons. So Michigan needs the best to combat the best, and they need to come back. So that's my take on defense. Want to get into a little bit just overall college football landscape. It's exciting for fans and maybe for everyone associated with college football, but the CFP race is the most wide open that we have seen in many years. Alabama, if you've watched them play at all this year, looks like a shell of its former self. Their quarterback play, I mean, I think J.J. McCarthy's performance was rough against Bowling Green. Go check out a little bit of Alabama this year. They started the transfer Tyler Buckner from Notre Dame. He was bad. He looked bad. He looked lost, and so they're juggling 3 potential quarterbacks, and it's really struggling. They scored 17 points at South Florida, and the game was 3-3 at halftime. I think it was 10-3 in the fourth quarter, and that's just Alabama. The SEC overall, just struggling. Arkansas lost at home. Um, LSU obviously has been up and down. They got blown out the first game by Florida State. They came back and won pretty convincingly yesterday, but that's at Mississippi State. That's against an SEC opponent. For a while yesterday, it looked like Michigan with a victory was going to be the number one team in the country because Georgia was losing 14-3 at halftime at home to South Carolina. So it's exciting for college football fans, exciting for college football as a sport. It's more wide open than ever this year. So I don't know better that Michigan had 4 turnovers at home against Bowling Green or not, but early in the season, and it is important for all of us to just remember that these high expectations that all of us put on these teams and these players are mostly put on there by us and the hype promoters associated with the sport to get us all to watch. Okay. And so we kind of do this to ourselves, and we forget that even guys that are going to potentially play in the NFL that look the part, that doesn't mean that they instantly get it. It doesn't mean that there isn't still a learning curve. And during that learning curve, it's frustrating. And last night's game against Bowling Green was incredibly frustrating for Wolverine fans. We all thought it was going to be a cakewalk. We all thought it was going to be a lot of fun. I mean, look, the positives are there. You turn the ball over 4 times. You throw an interception in the end zone twice, or an interception in the end zone, and then another just horrible interception, and still win 31-6 comfortably. Well, you must be doing something right. But it's really the opponent. We all know that if you do that, any of that stuff in a game against a Big Ten opponent, you're going to lose the game. The way Michigan played last night, there are the potential for 4, 5, 6 games to be right up in the air this year. We're going to preview Rutgers in a couple of days, but Rutgers under Greg Schiano, he's now back in his second stint at Rutgers, and he's now got that roster looking a lot more like he wants it to look. He's got some tough, gritty players, and they play with a lot of spirit and a lot of toughness. And then his quarterback, Gavin Wimsatt, who we were the recipient of 2 pick sixes from him last year. But in the first half last year, he was doing against Michigan. He was playing quite well. And so far this year, he's gotten a lot better, okay? He's now higher up on that learning curve. And again, they're going to be coming into Michigan Stadium with confidence. They're not going to be coming into Michigan Stadium scared or thinking that they're going to lose. They know, and they're going to hear from their coaches all week. You were right there with these guys last year. You were playing with them. You were holding your own on the line of scrimmage. And they're going to be pointing out that J.J. McCarthy is prone to mistakes and that Michigan's offensive line is having trouble getting push up front. And so, yeah, there's cause for concern. Panic? No, I'm not going to go there yet, but there is cause for concern. So there's a lot to like about this Michigan team. I think that it is still early to draw a lot of conclusions. And thank goodness that the head coach, Jim Harbaugh, is back and hopefully ready to work out some of these kinks, open up the playbook some, and fingers crossed we get Will Johnson back this week so that we can see really just how good this defense is and can be. So other thing to point out real quick before we leave, the point spread did come out. Michigan opened some kind of crazy point spread, like a 31-point favorite over Rutgers. That immediately moved down. That was obviously a clickbait spread because it's gone down to like 25, 26, 27. So the bettors no better than to Michigan has had 3 big spreads this year, haven't covered any of them. I think it was 36, 35, and 40 last night against Bowling Green. They haven't covered them. So the first 2 games, I think some of the rule changes in college football with the clock had something to do with that. Last night, it was nothing to do with the clock. It was just Michigan shooting itself in the foot. Michigan only ran 44 offensive plays last night, but it was because we kept giving the ball to the other team. And I think another thing to look for, Bowling Green held the ball for 36 out of 60 minutes against Michigan. Rutgers is one of the leaders in the country in time of possession. So that is Rutgers' game. They want to hold the ball and keep the ball away from the other team. It's a big part of Greg Schiano's strategy. So that's another thing to look for. If Michigan can't get pushed with the offensive line and keep drives going and sustain drives, that's playing right into Rutgers' hands. So something needs to be done about that this week. All right, we'll wrap it up there, Wolverine fans. So again, keep things in perspective. There's cause for concern. It wasn't a great night last night in terms of football performance, but hey, the light display was fun, and I'm sure everybody had plenty to drink. So the end of the day, we're 3-0, entering conference season, and it's always an up and down journey. It is, every season is a roller coaster ride. This one's going to be no different. Other things we're going to talk about in a couple of days: lack of backup quarterback, a real concern for Michigan, and lack of depth at running back. Another thing that Michigan was hoping to work out. But I think the lack of a real backup quarterback is a real concern. So we're going to get much more into that in a couple of days. Thanks for joining, everybody. All right, we'll be back soon. Go Blue.